Hi, this is Mark Oelze with PLEDGEtalk, a how-to when communication really matters. I'm in a part of a series entitled 21 Ways to Improve Your Communication. And this video I've entitled Those Challenging Conversationalists. Yeah, those challenging conversationalists. We can all probably think of people in our life who we struggle conversing with for one reason or another. I find myself struggling with people who talk nonstop or who never talk at all. And I know people in those categories right now. Maybe you are thinking of people like this too. Or you're thinking of someone who often interrupts or someone else who seems to be negative in almost all their conversations. Well, what do most of us do when we find ourselves in a conversation with people like this? Sadly, most of us ignore them or avoid them or simply not pay attention to them because we get irritated by them. Well, the sad reality is that they are like that because of past story. What they are wanting is the same as you and I, to be loved and respected, or to avoid any further pain from the lack of being loved and respected. And the way they relate is how they learned to adapt to their story growing up. Here's what we could do. We could use the principles of talk to address the concern. For example, with the person who talks on and never stops, we could say something like, Sally, when we are in a conversation, I find myself shutting down because I don't see any windows of time where I could interject between you sharing one idea after another and another. And I really long for our conversation to be more of a two-way interaction. Could you work with me on this by telling me one thought or idea at a time and then asking me what I think about it? That's using the 4 principles of talk. Second example, with the person who never talks, you could say something like, George, when we are together, I find myself leaning towards giving up on the relationship because I usually only get one-word answers to my questions, and I don't see or hear you talking very much. I would love to be able to have some really good interactions with you, and even more so, a growing friendship, relationship. Would you be willing to share more about your life or thoughts when we are around each other? Third example, with a person who often interrupts. When I am talking and get interrupted, I lose my train of thought and begin to feel like what I have to say really isn't important. It's something I've struggled with most of my life. When we are talking, could you work at hearing me all the way through before you say something to me? Can you hear the 4 principles of talk? Fourth example, with the person who seems to always be negative. So you could say, again, George, when we are together, I see and hear you speaking negatively most of the time, and I find myself wanting to pull away, or I find myself shutting down. I don't want to be down or pull away from you because I really want our friendship to grow. I wonder if, when we are together, if you would make a point to speak at least 2 positive things to every 1 negative. Well, those are just examples to think through. You could shape how you say those, but keep the 4 principles of talk in mind. Here's what it will take, finally, if you do this. First of all, it will take great amount of patience because they've been like this most, if not all, of their life. And so you're just going to have to be patient as they work at a different way of relating. Second of all, in accordance with that, it takes a willingness to go the long haul in the relationship. Thirdly, it's going to be critical to examine the motive for talking about these kind of matters. Why would you do this in the first place? Because they irritate you? Well, if that's the case, I would say, don't bring it up. Or is it because you love them and you really truly do long for greater relationship? And you see the effect that them being the way they is having on others, like pushing people away. And you see how they're missing out on the goodness of relational connectedness that they could be having. So if this is the motive, then consider bringing it up. Well, again, that's my Tuesday tune-up conversation tip for the week when dealing with those challenging conversationalists. To learn more, go to community.pledgetalk.com. Bye for now.